Data exfiltration is a major topic in penetration testing, and when it comes to Android hacking, once you gain access, you will be interested in transferring a lot of data, like your target's WhatsApp images, voice recording, or videos. In general, these types of data has a huge size that may reach to tens of gigabytes. So technically speaking, we can transfer these data over the same SSH tunnel that we already established. But doing that will block our ability to run any command until the transfer gets completed. However, if we could separate the data transfer in a separate tunnel than the command tunnel, then in this case we can have both running simultaneously. So what we're gonna do, we will code our client in such a way that if we received a certain signal or command from the Kali machine telling us that we have to transfer a certain file, then at this time we're gonna establish a new tunnel back to the Kali machine, and this tunnel is dedicated for file transfer only, and it will be terminated once the transfer gets completed. Paramiko library supports file transfer over SSH tunnel, and this method is called Secure FTP or SFTP. Now, coding a secure FTP or SFTP server can be quite complex. Instead of coding a new one from scratch, we can use the SSH service or server which came with Kali Linux for file transfer. However, we need to tune its config to make it dedicated only for secure FTP transfer and disable the command execution. Now we will do that for obvious security reason, since we definitely will not enable any option for anybody to execute arbitrary commands on our Kali side under any circumstances. Alright, so let's start with preparing the secure FTP server, and I will open the SSHD file that contains the setting for the SSH server on Kali Linux. So I'm gonna type pico, the location is etc ssh then sshd underscore config. So first I will change the listening port to a different one, since we are already using port 22 for Paramiko server. So let's use port 222. Next, I will hard code the listening IP with my current IP address. Okay. Now our final step, and as we said earlier, we will disable the command execution and only permit the file transfer feature. To do so, we need to add a rule to match the user profile that we will use for authentication and restrict the permission for that profile to use only secure FTP option. Okay, so after doing this step, the SSH feature will not work anymore. And we will need to comment the last line here, as we don't want to use PAM for authenticating our users. Okay, so I'm gonna save the config. And let's get back to the terminal and see the listening ports. And we got nothing so far, but after starting the SSH server using service SSH start. Okay, right now we got our listener on port 222. Okay, cool. Right now, to verify that our server does not allow interactive shell and only used for file transfer purposes over SSH, I will use PuTTY software to try to log into the server. So 192.168.1.106, this is the IP address of the Kali, and port 222. And I will skip the warning message for getting the server keys for the first login time, and I will use the root info to login. Now notice once I made a successful authentication, the session gets terminated immediately, as requesting interactive shell is not allowed. Now I have to mention that if you are planning to expose this server to the outside world, then you should consider to change the secure FTP logging using the root account. Even if the interactive shell is disabled, you can make a standard user and use it instead of the root. Okay, right now and at this point, it's the time for adding few lines to the client side. First, we have to inform our client that if it gets a certain signal, then this means it has to establish a new tunnel to our secure FTP server, and it has to transfer the file that we requested. After that, it should end this tunnel. Now, technically, you can make any signal string that you may like. For this demonstration, I will be using a string named grab. So, to reflect this requirement into our code, I will add a new if statement saying that if we got a grab keyword, then this means we've got to do a file transfer, and it should follow with a star, then the file path or the name of the file that we are planning to send. We will use the split function to split it up into two parts. The second part contains the file name or the file path, and we will store it in a variable named path. Now remember that when I explained the file transfer, I said it's gonna be on a separate tunnel and should not affect the command tunnel. In order to achieve this, we will create a new function named secureFTP, and we will start this secureFTP function as a new thread and pass the path argument. So let me start with importing the threading library, and then we're gonna create a new thread, and the target, which is the name of the new function that we will create, is secureFTP, and we will pass an argument named path. Then we will call start function. Now before going on, in the previous video I mentioned two possible issues, which are a final else statement at the end to catch any mistyping of the command on the server side. So if we did not get any of these mentioned command, we will retain an unrecognized command. So let me sort this one out really quick by adding final else statement, and chan.send we will return unrecognized command. The second concern was the change directory issue, which will happen if the directory that we want to jump to contains a space. To avoid this issue, we can simply replace the splitting string. So instead of using space, we will be using star or asterisk. So the new format would be cd star the directory that we want to change to. Okay, right now we have to create the secure FTP function that will be called in a thread. So def secure FTP, and we will get the path. Okay, now within exception handling, we will connect to our secure FTP server using Paramiko transport class. Then passing our credentials to authenticate. And finally, we will retrieve an object named secureFTP or SFTP underscore client. The SFTP underscore client object used to perform remote file operations using put and get functions. The put function is used to send a file from Android to the Kali machine, and the get function used to download a file from the Kali machine to the Android device. Now the put function requires two arguments. The first argument is the absolute path or the name of the file that we want to send. The second argument is the remote directory where we will store the data. So I will make a folder on the Kali desktop named as ftp_upload, and in this folder we will hold our exfiltrated data. Finally, we will just close the tunnel and we will pass any exception that we got. Before testing the code, let me just add a quick indicator that we are initiating the secure FTP after starting the thread. So I will copy the print statement and type starting secure FTP function. Okay, it is testing time. I got my client.py transferred into CubePython scripts folder, and here we got our SFTP server is listening on port 222. So let me start the Python script to handle our tunnel and commands. And once I run the client side, I got our connection. So let's type ls and then cd SD card. Now notice that we got an error about the directory since we changed the format. So instead we should use cd then star then SD card. Okay, let's go to the sounds directory. And let's grab this PDF file and I'll type grab module X, and once we do so, notice that we got the file transferred behind the scene in a different secure FTP channel in a way that won't interrupt our command channel functionality. And let me just open the file to confirm that it gets transferred without any error. Now I will grab voice1 file and while the file is being sent, I will jump and type ls and then pwd print working directory, and as you can see we have a full operational channel. So I will go back and jump to WhatsApp directory. Then profile pictures. And then grab this picture. Okay, and here as you can see, here is my profile picture gets transferred. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you very much guys for watching.